Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to repair a flickering screen. It can be a monitor or a TV screen. It's a similar repair for both of them, and usually it's coming from the power supply and specifically the capacitors inside the power supply. You simply need the basic tools like screwdriver, soldering iron, flux core solder, and a desoldering pump or desoldering braids. First of all, make sure you are protecting the screen by putting a towel on the working table. This will prevent any scratches. Then you can start removing all the screws around the cover. Lift it up gently. It's gonna crack a little bit, but that's okay. Do not force too much. Here you go. Then you have the access to the inside of the screen. You now can disconnect the cables. If you are not sure how to get it disconnected, take your time to look at it. I suggest you to identify the cables when they look similar to others. Be gentle when lifting the parts. Some cables are hiding under the covers. This is not a race, so take your time to do things properly. So here we have the power supply board. So you have a few screws to remove. And this is where the capacitors are hiding. And I'm talking about capacitors because usually these are the components that are the problem. The reason why you are getting a flickering screen, flashing screen or blinking screen. They do inflate, they do leak, so they do not work anymore as intended. If we have a closer look, you'll see that the top of them is bumpy with some liquid coming off from the capacitors, so that's why we need to get them replaced. It's going to solve the flickering problem. And you have to know that they are quite inexpensive. It's going to cost you probably $1 or $2 on Amazon. As suggested earlier, I'm identifying the cables because they are very similar, so I don't want to make any mistake. So here we have the power supply board. You can get the whole board replaced, but it's going to cost you probably $50. If you replace only the capacitors, it's going to cost you $1 or $2 plus the tools if you don't already have them. So we're going to identify the position of each capacitor on the board with the marker, just to make sure that we are removing the right components. Also, I'm going to write down the value of each capacitor. So here we have a 330 microfarad capacitor. Then after that, 820 and another 820 microfarad. So these are simple components, easy to find on the internet. I got them from Amazon, but you can probably find them at the local electronics store. You are better to choose maybe better quality components, but anyway, you can replace them by the original ones. It's not a problem. It's going to work for a few years anyway. So you can use the desoldering pump to remove them, or the desoldering braids. The capacitors are not very sensitive to heat, so it shouldn't be a problem. Any of them is going to work. So we can have a closer look at the old capacitor open on the top. That's the same for the second one. So make sure you are putting them at the right position. There is a polarity for the capacitors, so it's important to respect it. So once you're done with soldering, you can cut the extra legs from the capacitors using cutters ideally. I lost my cutters, so I had to use scissors, but this is really not ideal. It's now time to put everything back together, so you'll have to follow the same steps backward this time. So if you are not used to dismantle, reassemble that kind of equipment, I suggest you maybe to film yourself like what I've done on this video. That way, if there is anything missing, you can easily find it by looking at your video. I would say that that kind of repair takes like 1 hour maybe for a screen like this, maybe 1 hour and a half or 2 hours for a TV screen. If your working area is well prepared and if you have all tools in hand, it shouldn't be too long. For the components, if you already know what is the problem, you can order them in advance, or you can open the screen, list what you need and place the order. Then after that you can perform the repair. Now we will switch it on and see what happens. It now works properly compared to earlier, so we're gonna try once again, and it's perfect.